What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and today we're going to talk about something really crazy. I've got a couple of stories I want to share with you guys. I know we just did a video about some stories in the news. My God, the Wasp is back for real. I thought he died.
I thought he would have left by now.
Oh my God, and he looks super mad. Super mad. Dude, I am getting... Y'all hear it, right? I ain't making this up. Cody, he's coming towards you. He's coming towards you, dude. Dude, I got like goosebumps. Oh my God. He's bouncing off the ceiling right now. Somebody left a comment on the last video that we did talking about the Wasp, saying, Joe, you're an ex-con. How are you scared of a wasp? But let me tell you something. There are a lot of things that guys in prison are scared of. And one thing that I can guarantee you a lot of prisoners are scared of is bees and wasps. And right now, that wasp is sitting right there above Cody's head. Just a little bit to the right. He's right there, Cody. We're going to try to get through this video anyways. But we've got some very serious topics that we're going to be talking about in this video. And the main topic that I want to share with you guys is when prison transport goes wrong. You know, with the fact that I've spent a lot of my life being locked up, one thing that certainly comes with being locked up is getting transported. Whether you're going from a jail to court, whether you're going from a jail to another jail, or from jail to prison. You are certainly going to spend some time in the back of a transport van while serving time. But I just ran across a very crazy story. I mean, this is absolutely insane. When you hear this, I mean, you are going to probably be as mad as I am learning about this story. This is like a prison transport story gone wrong / horror story. And this was actually brought to us by an awesome supporter of After Prison Show by the name of Amber, who rocks with After Prison Show on Patreon. If you guys aren't rocking with After Prison Show on Patreon, I highly encourage you guys to do so because we're posting all sorts of bonus content, behind the scenes, early access. There's just a lot of things going on with the After Prison Show Patreon. I'm not going to plug it anymore. If you want to rock with us there, that is awesome. If not, I'll still catch you in these videos. But it was Amber who sent me this story, and when I read this, I couldn't even believe this. I've never heard of anything like this, and I learned a heck of a lot from this story. I'm going to be sharing all of that with you guys in this video, as well as a few other things as well. So it's with mentioning all of that let's go ahead and dive head first into this video. Now, the first thing that I want to say about this prison transport horror story, or prison transport gone wrong, is, and this is something that I had no idea about, but I learned from this story, and that is that I had no idea that there was such a thing as privately run jail and prison escort services. I had no idea about this, but it would seem there most certainly is, and this company that this story surrounds is like the biggest or highest paid privately owned prisoner transport service. And I don't want to put their names out there, but I'm sure if you guys investigate this story, you'll learn exactly who they are. But this company is no stranger to having crazy things happen to prisoners who are in their custody. Because this story goes on to say at least 5 people have died while in the custody of this transportation company, and also that 24 have been killed or seriously injured in more than 50 crashes involving private extradition vehicles since 2000. So what this certainly seems like is that these private prisoner transportation companies, they are no stranger to having crazy things happen to the prisoners who they're responsible for. And this story that I'm getting ready to share with you guys is a perfect example of that, because this is absolutely insane. Now, I'm not exactly sure when this story took place, because what this story actually refers to is the lawsuit that has come since this incident. But whenever this did happen, there was a guy by the name of Edward who ended up getting arrested outside of a gas station here in the very state of Virginia, where After Prison Show is at, because police saw him getting into his vehicle, ran the plates, which were from out of state. This guy was from Texas, and I guess that the plates came back stolen, or maybe the vehicle came back stolen. But the crazy thing about this that I have to throw in first and foremost is that the charges that would be placed on this guy would end up being false. In fact, it would be reported later that the car wasn't stolen, or the plates weren't stolen, or somehow this was just some sort of a big mistake. They say that this guy Edward had recently moved from Houston, Texas. He was working as a waiter, and maybe he was getting off of work when he was walking outside of a gas station to get back in his car when he was first arrested. But what would follow after this guy was arrested was absolutely terrible. They say that Edward was arrested and arraigned on a fugitive warrant, and because allegedly these tags or this car was stolen from Texas, this guy would then have to be extradited back to Texas, meaning that he would have to be transported back to Texas for these charges to then be taken care of down there. And I'm guessing the way that they went about extraditing old Edward back to Texas was by using one of these privately owned prisoner transport companies. Well, what follows is absolutely horrendous, because it says that a normal run from Virginia to Texas would take about 20 hours. Well, guess how long Edward stayed in the back of this prisoner transport van? You are not even going to believe this. Again, this is absolutely crazy. This guy would end up spending 18 days locked up inside of this van, not being able to use the restroom, no bathroom breaks. They told this guy if he had to go, he was going to have to go inside of an empty bottle or on himself. This guy sat in his own filth and the filth of others in the back of this privately owned prisoner transport van for over a half a month straight. That right there is beyond inhumane. I don't care what somebody's done. To have a person locked up inside of a prisoner transport van for 18 days straight, not offering them a chance to use the restroom at all, I honestly don't even know what to say about that. They say that this guy was shackled and chained so tight that they left marks on his body, and that he was also crammed in the back of this van with up to 15 other people at certain times during this trip. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, like, why in the hell would this prisoner transport company that makes all of this money keep this one guy locked up in this van for 18 days straight? You could imagine that something is going to come from this. Well, what I've learned from this story is that these privately owned prisoner transport companies make more money per how many prisoners they actually extradite, deliver, and transport. So the more prisoners you can pack into that van and transport here and there or wherever, the more money they're going to be making. And maybe old Edward's destination was just a little too far off the beaten path in comparison to where they were picking up prisoners and dropping other prisoners off. And it was something along those lines that potentially led to the fact that this guy would spend 18 straight days locked up in the back of this van. This story says that at some points, as many as 15 people were crammed into the cargo van, exceeding capacity, something that Dave and me have talked about in a recent video where we went and rented a U-Haul van to get him a bed. And me and him rode in the back of this van and sort of reminisced what it was like to be in the back of a prison transport van. And Dave was actually talking about in that video how a lot of times these vans are going to be overcrowded.
Ain't no seatbelts in no transport vans now.
There definitely isn't. Actually, there is now, but guess what? How in the world am I supposed to put a seatbelt on when I'm shackled with a box and handcuffs and I'm sitting like this? Like, yeah, hey bro, can you put my seatbelt on for me? It's not happening.
You don't need no seatbelt, you're just a prisoner.
See, they're like, no, see what we do is we just pack you in so tight if we were to get into an accident anyways, y'all would just, brace each other.
They don't care about your comfort and most certainly your safety. And that's evident by the fact of what we addressed earlier in this video, saying that so many people have been killed in the custody of these transportation vans, and also something like 24 people have been killed or injured in over 50 crashes that have happened with these vans as well. Without regular bathroom stops, Edward spent the duration of the journey sitting in human filth and waste, both his own and that of other detainees locked in the dark, sweltering cage. I cannot even imagine what this experience was like for this dude. And I am glad to hear that this dude has a lawsuit against this company. I hope they pay this guy millions, because nobody should have to experience anything like this ever. Instead of bathroom breaks, drivers demanded detainees relieve themselves in empty bottles or on themselves. That ain't even humane right there. They treating these people worse than damn animals. At least one person defecated on the floor of the van and another detainee vomited. But the driver did not stop to clean up the mess. I mean, just listen to how crazy that sounds. The driver is in this van as well. You know this driver is going to have to smell and deal with this as well, and they're not even going to do anything about this. Now, they also say that this guy, Edward, was on medication, which of course he was denied throughout the duration of these 18 days. And without the medication that he needed, he began to feel sick after 3 days on the road, developed a headache, started to see spots, felt calmly disoriented and nauseated. He said he pounded his head on the steel wall to try to get attention of the correctional officers for medical attention. But repeated requests to be taken to the hospital were ignored. Instead, officers told him to shut up or he was going to be tased. And again, I mean, I really don't even know what to say about this. I'm glad to hear this guy's got a lawsuit. And again, keep in mind that this guy's charges were eventually dismissed against him because they were false. This guy spent 18 days in the back of a prisoner transport van for something he didn't even do. This guy was an innocent man who was treated worse than an animal. And I hope they pay this dude millions for what they put him through. I hope it actually shuts down this damn company, because that is no way to treat anybody at all. You know, I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this story in particular, so please comment down below and let me know what you think about this. Have you ever heard of anything like this before in your life? And just, I mean, what do you think about this? What do you think should happen to this company in this lawsuit? How much money do you think this guy should get? For real? $1, $2, $5 million? What kind of a price tag do you put on somebody going through something like that? Real quick, I've got 2 other stories that I want to share with you guys, and both of these stories pertain to like getting locked up for the craziest damn charges. In this first story, when I first heard about this, I could not even believe this. But there was just a Texas woman, this also happened in Texas, just like where this guy Edward was from in our first story. But a Texas woman was just sentenced to 5 years in prison for voting. Going to the voting station and casting her ballot. A woman by the name of Crystal Mason down in Texas went to vote using her current license and her current address, and after she cast her vote, she went home. She had good faith to believe that she could vote, and she would have never voted had she known she wasn't able to do so. She says the next time she even thought about this voting situation was when she was being arrested at her probation office. That's right, this woman was on probation. She was a convicted felon who was previously convicted for committing tax fraud for clients through her tax preparation business. And you know, this is absolutely crazy to think about, but in every state, you know, the way they carry it with people who are on probation or people who are convicted felons is completely different. In some states, immediately upon getting released, you can vote. In other states, you're not able to vote until you're released off of probation or until you get your rights restored. I mean, every single state for the most part, maybe some states match up with other states, but every state has different guidelines for when exactly a convicted felon can actually vote, if they even can do so. And in this woman, Crystal Mason's case, by her actually casting a ballot in the general election, she had broken a state law that prohibits residents from voting until their sentences have been fully served. And that includes parole, probation, or supervision. They say Mason had been on supervised release after spending 3 years in prison. And for a time, she was even working for the state of Texas. I'm not sure what they're actually trying to say with that. But it goes on to say that this woman was sentenced to 5 years for voting illegally, and she contends that she was never informed by the state of the restrictions on felons. She didn't understand, and she was never told she couldn't vote. Not by a district judge, not by anyone at a halfway house where she lived after she had gotten out, and not by a probation officer. That is some scary stuff to think about. Maybe she had received some bad information. Maybe there was somebody who was on probation just like she was, or maybe somebody that she knew from serving time, maybe like a jailhouse lawyer told her, hey, you know, once you get released, you can vote. And maybe that's all she had to go on. I mean, obviously, she probably should have looked into this situation a little bit more. But to think, I mean, nobody informed her, hey, look, here are the guidelines and the restrictions for what you can and can't do after being released. And nowhere on that does it say you can't vote. In fact, I can remember while I was on probation, when you come home after being locked up, they're going to give you a piece of paper that tells you what you can and can't do. And I can tell you this personally because I've dealt with it many times. Nowhere on that piece of paper is it going to say anything about voting at all. So if you've got some bad information or if you just don't know, then this is damn sure something very likely that could happen. But to think that this woman received 5 years in prison just for voting? That sounds absolutely excessive if you ask me. I mean, you could have gave this chick anything. You could have reinstated her probation, given her a warning, given her 6 months at the very most, but 5 years though? That's messed up. That is really messed up. Dude, I'm about to... Ooh, we got caught in spider web. Oh my God. You're free, Lost. Y'all probably thought I was playing. Y'all probably did. Y'all probably thought there ain't no wasp in there for real. I'm sure y'all seen them. I feel palmy, balmy, whatever the word is, where you got that cold sweat. Bees, they scare me for real. When he landed back here, I was gone. Ain't sticking around. You ain't stinging old Joe. I'm allergic. There's one last crazy story I want to share with you guys about somebody getting locked up for just an absolutely crazy charge. And in this case, this one's a little more understandable. But there was a guy by the name of Jeremy who sent me a message on Facebook telling me about this story. In fact, I think he even said that this was a friend of his who this happened to. And this happened in the state of Chicago. I almost tried to run with that because I knew the comment section would be flooded with, Joe, Chicago's not a state, it's a city, it's in Idaho. Joe, you most certainly are not the smartest tool in the shed or something to them lines. But yes, I do know Chicago is not a state, it's in Idaho. I know. And the guy this story is about is a 35-year-old man by the name of Eric, who got sentenced to 22 years in prison for stealing a TV remote control. Yep. 22 years in prison. Now, most certainly, this guy Eric was no stranger to the law and getting in trouble. This guy had an extensive criminal history. He definitely did a lot of stealing, had some breaking and entering charges, I'm sure. But ultimately, it would end up being this charge for stealing this remote control, possibly being like the final straw, which would end up getting this guy sentenced to 22 years in prison. This story goes on to say that this guy repeatedly thumbed his nose at the law, and obviously they were probably tired of dealing with this guy inside of the courts, and they just, you know what? You stole a remote control, we caught you, your record looks worse than a school book, you've got more pages to your criminal history than they got pages in textbooks inside of a school. You're gonna get 22 years for this stealing a remote control charge. Can you imagine being this guy locked up for 22 years and people asking you, what you locked up for? Man, you got 22 years for stealing a remote control? What in the God? Man, I ain't never gonna commit me no more crime when I go home. Things must have changed out there in the free world. Hey, Eric, you're the reason I'm gonna get my life together. They giving people 22 years for stealing a remote control to a TV? Boy, I got to go home and do something different. And you know, it was crazy the way this guy ended up getting caught because I guess he was attempting to steal some things. The remote control possibly being one of them, probably the TV as well, I'm sure. Who's just gonna go steal a TV remote? I mean, you must be sitting on your couch like, hey, why my clicker don't be working? You know what? I know somebody who got a clicker and they, where that remote control at? Ain't nobody gonna be just going and stealing no TV remote. But they say whatever happened, this guy must have been seen and he was running and fleeing from the scene. And when he did so, he dropped a glove. And the police were able to find DNA matching his inside of that glove. Can you imagine that? The police did a DNA sample forensic test on this glove for a remote control. And because this guy was already a convicted felon, they already had his DNA on file. For those of you who don't know, anytime you're convicted of a felony, no matter where you're at, I'm pretty sure this applies to every state, but anytime you're convicted of a felony, they go ahead and give you that little Q-tip inside of your mouth. They take your DNA right there and you are on a national database. Because if you commit any crime and you go do something crazy and you drop a little hair off of your head and they find that hair and they got your DNA on file, they're gonna find you real quick. And that's most certainly what happened to old Eric as he was attempting to steal this TV remote control and probably the TV as well, because again, I can't see nobody just going and stealing a TV remote when he dropped that glove. Sad thing to think about. But you know, when your record is bad and you were constantly messing up, catching charges, and you just ain't gonna have no act right in you whatsoever, best believe at some point, the courts are going to get tired of dealing with you if they don't have like what they got in California, like 3 strikes and you're out. Commit the same crime 3 times in California, or maybe it's like 3 felonies. I don't know exactly what it is. But after the 3rd time, when you strike out, they're giving you life. And to be completely honest with you, that's what they might as well have given to this dude Eric right here. Absolutely insane. Hey, look, that's it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about all of this. You know, I really enjoy sharing these stories with you, and I hope I'm able to do so in an insightful and maybe even an educational way as well. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day. Peace!